Chapter 27. 6 months later. A body in front of me was a cadaver of a 19-year-old male teenager, according to his ID card. His body was found near a river close to a public transport pier. I stared at the lifeless grey body before me while 3 of my 5th-year medical students stood further away, hesitant fear etching across their features. I pulled to adjust my white rubber gloves and turned to my students, all of whom were girls. Girls? How can you see him if you're standing that far? Come closer. I commanded the trio. Booze, a 2nd-year pathology resident who was standing next to me, let out a chuckle. Their first time, Professor. Yeah, it's the first day of their rotation, and they've got a cadaver this morning. This group is lucky. The last bunch got all dried out cadavers. I gestured to the dead body. What do you think, Booze? Please tell me. Sure. The resident crouched down next to the cadaver with a thoughtful expression. The skin is sodden, grey, cold, and wrinkled. There's traces of white foam at the corners of his mouth, which should have been the result of asphyxiation. Overall, his death should be the result of drowning. But how do we know that this person died before or after he was thrown into the river? Or did he die because of the drowning? We couldn't tell for sure at the moment, but it may help if we found rocks and debris from where he's drowned in his hand. It means that he was still alive when he was drowning. However, in this case, we found nothing in his grasps. It's hard to come by, but it does help if we find these. What else? Am I being too hard on my student? However, I had to do my duty as a professor. I considered myself one of the least strict medical professors. We need to cut him open. If he was still alive when he's drowned, then he might find dirt and mud in his lower respiratory tract, which occurred when he inhaled these in the water. Or we might find water from where he's drowned in his stomach. Booze looked at me and tensed as if he was afraid that he would say something wrong. I agree with you. We'll open him up this afternoon. There are many things that you should learn, and we'll learn them together during the dissection. I took my gloves off and backed away to give Booze a space to take pictures of the cadaver. When I was sure that I got the pictures I needed, I turned to smile at the trio. The girls dressed in college uniforms and pants, the attires which I allowed since there were activities that required flexibility. Wearing skirts wouldn't allow such efficiency. If you need pictures for the case, you can get them from Booze. There's no need to take pictures yourself. Thank you, Professor. The young woman who was wearing glasses replied. She looked excited. Let's discuss the case study when we get back to the faculty. You have a class with Professor Wood in the afternoon, right? Why don't you get the photos in the evening then? Hey, Booze, come here and teach the girls about drowning. With that, I slipped away from my lecture to talk to the police, leaving Booze to continue the lecture for the medical students. My role as a forensic physician had immensely changed after I moved here. I'd transformed from being the regular pathologist who worked day by day, providing occasional lectures for the interns, into a full-time medical professor. I returned as a professor at the university where I graduated, and despite the luxury of being in familiar surroundings, I had to work hard adjusting myself to the new role. I had more responsibilities, tougher cases to deal with, pressure from senior professors. I was no longer the only pathologist in the province anymore. Now I was just a tiny young professor with little experience who had been teaching here for only a few months. I spent the entire afternoon teaching anatomical dissection of the drowned man and a patient who had passed away in the hospital to the residents. I walked out of the cold, dark autopsy room wearily. I could only let out a sigh when I looked upon the scorching sunlight outside. Why is it so hot here in Bangkok? The temperature between the inside and outside was totally different. Bun. Hearing a call from someone, an annoyed look on my face morphed into a fake smiley one. It's Dr. Wood, a senior pathologist. The man walked toward me. He looked surprised, as if it was by pure coincidence that he ran into me here. You just finished? Yeah. I looked at the man before me. Wood was tall and slender. His face, as other members in the department, and I put it, looked like a cute puppy. He seemed nice and mature, befitting a man who was turning 35. Furthermore, he was my brother's medical school classmate, and that gave him the privilege of knowing what's going on around my life. And you too? Why did you have a long lecture? I was stuck in court. I was almost an hour late for my lecture. Right. I nodded in acknowledgement. Well, if you'll excuse me. Bun, wait. Wood called before I could turn and walk away. Are you free this evening? Here we go again. The fake smile remained on my face. I'd be lying if I say I'll be busy. Wood remained silent for a moment while he was trying to register the meaning behind my words before a smile slipping from his lips. That means you're free, then. Well, there is a new Japanese restaurant near my house. The interior decoration is beautiful, and they offer a special menus discount for 2 customers who go together, eel sushi or something like that. If you're free, would you care to join me? This was the 2nd month of his effort. I'd never spoken directly about this with him. However, Boone told me that Wood had a crush on me. I had always tried to avoid him, thinking that if I paid him no mind, he'd probably stop bugging me. However, even though it was quite some time now, Wood still relentlessly pursued me. I think it's time that we really had a talk. Yeah, sure. Wood looked like he was going to burst from happiness. Wood and I walked into a beautiful restaurant decorated in the Japanese style. The orange lights, paintings, bamboo partitions, and Japanese melody mixed with some sort of scent worked up our appetite. Wood ushered me to sit at the corner of the restaurant. I took the menu from the waitress and grimaced once I looked down at it. Must have cost a fortune. I scanned for the cheapest dish that would fill my stomach. Actually, I wasn't a picky eater, and I didn't mind the roadside shops. I wouldn't be easily pleased by someone just because he took me to some fancy restaurant. Wood probably wasn't aware of this fact. Only a handful of people knew that. One of them was him. Sticky rice, pork rinds, chili paste, Thai spicy sausages, the standard dishes that he bought from the rustic market were the rustic market most delicious meals I ever had. God, I miss you so much. We'll have a set of special sushi. Wood's voice pulled me from my reverie. I looked down at the menu once again. The course he had ordered, albeit at a discount, it was still too expensive. Anything else? Have anything you like. The dinner's on me. Whoa, wait. Are you gonna pay for me? I quickly protested. We could share. No. I took your valuable time. I'm buying. Wood smiled broadly. If you're not going to get more, I'll order for you. We'll take another one of these. He turned to the waitress and pointed at something on the menu. I let out a sigh. Do whatever you wanted to do. I waited for the waitress to walk off with the menu before I cut to the chase. Wood, how do you feel about me? An expression of shock appeared on Wood's face. What do you mean? You like me, don't you? I inquired frankly. Boone told me. Wood scratched his head. Well, yeah, like I said, I like you since you started working here. And you're also my friend's brother. At first, I wasn't sure if you're gay, so I decided to ask Boonlord. What did he say? He said you used to date both men and women, but you seem to like men in particular. Wood said, fidgeting with the glass of water as if he was trying to be less nervous. And he said that you don't have a boyfriend, so if I'm interested, I can try to ask you on a date. It sounded like Boone was trying to get the two of us together. I'd give Four Eyes a piece of my mind later. Was all my acknowledgement. Now that you brought this up, I can ask you myself. What took a deep breath? It's probably too early for this, but do you have someone that you like? If you have no one in mind, can I ask you out? I looked at the other man coolly before looking out at the glass wall into the dying sunlight. I'm waiting for someone. Wood's face fell visibly. Is that so? Yeah. I watched the people passing by outside. Ever since the last time we met, we talked less and less. I haven't spoke to him on the phone for over a month now. Once he brought it up, I had the desire to vent it out. His life right now is too much of an ordeal, too much for him to spare his attention to me. After the last time I was summoned to appear before the court as a witness, Tan and I talked less and less. The latest news I heard was that his mother was getting worse. The hospital needed to have a breathing tube inserted into her throat and put her in the ICU. I had called Tan once, and we had spoken only briefly before Tan hung up, because he had to look after his mother. So I wouldn't dare call him again if there's no emergency. I knew this would happen. While Tan had to go on trial, was out of a job, was branded as the son of a ruthless mafia, and his mother had become severely ill, if we were together now, we'd fight a lot for sure. But you still want to wait for him? Wood tried. Waiting forever, don't you get tired of it? I don't have to, but give me time to let him go. If I'm ready to let go of the man I've been waiting for, I'll let you know. I turned back to Wood and smiled faintly. But geez, you might have to wait a long time. Wood drew his breath through his teeth as if he'd been burned. Boonlord has warned me about you, saying you're a complicated man. I could see it from your temperament and recent works. Never thought I'd have seen it for myself. That's probably why I'm always getting dumped. The first set of sushi had arrived. I extended the chopsticks to pick up the sushi into my plate. I'm really sorry, though. You're so nice bringing me to this fancy restaurant. No, it's okay. I'm glad you made it clear. The senior medical professor sighed. If Boonlord told me that you already liked someone else, I would have stayed away. But this guy didn't say anything. Let's kick his ass after we finish eating this. Wood and I burst out laughing at the same time. I was glad that he seemed to understand me well, for I wouldn't have to feel uncomfortable when working with him. The gate was opened shortly after I buzzed the doorbell. Suddenly a small figure shot forward to hold my leg as soon as the door opened. A little girl. She was wearing a pink dress with her wavy hair in pigtails. Her small voice rang loudly with excitement. Uncle! Have you greeted your uncle properly, darling? May, my sister-in-law, spoke with her daughter in a sweet voice. I looked up at her and smiled. Her name was May, or Dr. May, a beautiful physician with long straight hair. My brother had to wage war against dozens of men for her hand in marriage. At present, she was a medical professor at the Department of Psychiatry in one of the prestigious medical schools. Baitoy seemed to remember what she should do. She stepped back, putting her palms together before bowing slightly. Hello, Uncle. Next time, pay your respects to your uncle before you hug him. Understood? Yes, Mommy. Baitoy replied with a sing-song tone and rushed back to hug my leg tightly. I laughed in a relaxed way. My fatigue had evaporated because of this little girl. I rubbed her head playfully. She surely got this wavy hair from her father. You did very well, Baitoy. I have a sweet for you. Baitoy raised her head to look at me, her eyes alight expectantly. Macaroon! It's macaroon, beautiful. I raised a bag containing a box of colorful macaroons. If you want to have some, go wash your hands. Yay! Baitoy shouted and ran around the house. May looked at me with a smile and shook her head. Baitoy has already brushed her teeth. I don't see why she can't brush them again. I peered into the house, which was illuminated brightly by the lights. What is Boone doing? I guess he's out cold up there. Come, let's go inside. May turned around and led me into the 2-story modern house. Boone bought this house in a housing estate for his family. It wasn't located far from our parents' house. That way, Boone could take care of them easily. I stayed in a residence reserved for professors in the faculty and would come to stay over at my parents' house occasionally. Once I entered the living room, I saw papers of research journals printed from the internet strew about the sofa and on the coffee table. A psychiatry textbook had been laid open. Are you working on a new research? I'm so sorry, it's all messy. May bent down to remove the papers from the sofa to give me a seat. I placed a bag of macaroons on the table and rushed to help her. Not research. I'm looking into a case of one of my medical students who seemed to have suddenly experienced some kind of hallucination. He's in the hospital right now. It's a fascinating case. A difficult one to treat, at that. I'm trying to find new and effective approaches of psychotherapy. Oh, right. Keep it up, May. I looked at the stack of papers full of knowledge, which wasn't related to my expertise at all. I really admire people who work in the psychiatry field. I couldn't hold a conversation that long. So you choose to get rid of the conversation altogether? May teased me with a smile, and I laughed. Suggestion accepted. Suddenly May's eyes drifted to the stairs. I followed her gaze. Oh, there he is, our in-house zombie. Your brother came to see you. Uh-huh. He told me on the phone. Boone, my brother, let out a yawn. He was in a t-shirt and boxer shorts. Gone was the vibes of the assistant professor. He probably knew that the guest was his own brother. That's why he allowed himself to dress like a hobo. I walked up to him, grabbed his arm, and pulled him into the kitchen, right past little Baitoy, who jumped up and down toward the back of macaroons. Boone looked at me nervously. What the heck, Bun? Why did you tell Wood I'm still single? I whispered in a firm voice. Why? My friend asked me. I basically told him the truth. What's wrong with that? Boone smiled, eyeing me with interest. What happened? He invited me to dinner, that's why. Like 100 times. He kept doing that, so I went with him today to talk this out. I pointed an accusing finger at Boone. And you, stay away from my personal affairs from now on. Yeah, I'm sorry. I saw that you're alone, so I tried to find you a friend. Boone paused for a while. You don't look okay. Don't I look okay? I'm perfectly fine. I took a deep breath. That's all I wanted to say. Stay out of this. I can handle my own life. I was about to turn back to play with my niece, but Boone interrupted. Tan didn't call you at all? I paused and looked down at the floor. Yeah, we haven't talked in a while. So, what now? Aren't you gonna give yourself a chance to meet someone new? I turned to look at Boone, who was standing with his arms over his chest, eyeing me. If you don't knock it off, I'll stop talking to you. You were always threatening me like that. Boone rolled his shoulders. All right. No more questions, but if you need anything, just ask me. I then remembered something. What about my plane ticket? Have you found a cheap one yet? There are plenty, actually, but I think you'd better consider the quality of the airlines. The price doesn't have to be very cheap. A flight to the United States takes more than 20 hours. You won't be happy if you fly with a suck airline. Boone went silent for a moment and sighed. You just came back less than a year, and now you're leaving me again? This is different. This time I'm going to grad school, so that I'd return to pay up my scholarship at this place. By the way, don't forget to send me the link for a cheap ticket. With that, I walked up to Bai Toy, who was sitting on the sofa and was happily munching on a pink macaroon. I sat down next to my niece, raising my hand to play with her hair. The joy of fatherhood must be something very beautiful. I remember the day Boone sent me the picture of his newborn baby girl, and later called me on the phone to brag incessantly about his daughter's cuteness. I guess I wouldn't have the kind of opportunity unless I find myself a wife to conceive my baby. However, it wouldn't be fair to the woman in the relationship. Pray, my ex-girlfriend had once told me that she wanted to be the last girl deceived by me. After that incident, I had made a decision to stop doing this. I wouldn't date a woman for cover ever again. I'd accept my orientation and continue on with my life. Uncle, thank you. Bai Toy's cheerful voice pulled me back to reality. My niece turned and hugged me tightly. Please visit me more. Of course. Don't forget to brush your teeth after candy too. I bent down to give her a big kiss on her cheek and rose up. Since I can't have any children of my own, I would love Bai Toy like my daughter. We shared the same blood, after all. I better go home. See you later, pumpkins. After saying goodbye to Boone and May, I then drove back to my small residence. It took me more than 45 minutes to reach home. I plopped myself down on the bed and pulled out my cell. There were notifications from the forensic pathologist professor's line group chat, alerting about a meeting which would be taking place tomorrow. A message from Wood, catching up on what's been going on. A message from my brother, sending a link to buy a plane ticket. A message from my student who wanted to show me the presentation. However, I received nothing from the man whom I wanted to talk to the most. I opened up Tan's and my latest chat conversation, which happened last week. I typed out a message, "How are you?" and hit send. When he's not busy, he would answer me. I turned off the screen, placing the phone next to me and closing my eyes. I've never felt this way with anyone before. The hollow inside my chest must be something called loneliness. I handed the stack of paperwork to the middle-aged man in front of me. He took it attentively. Okay, they've accepted your application and have sent the course syllabus. Have you booked a ticket yet? I just bought my ticket last night, Professor. I looked at the documents of Professor Youngyut's hand. I've scheduled my visa appointment on Monday. I've written a leave of absence letter. Could you sign it for me? Very well. Professor Youngyut, the head of the Department of Medical Jurisprudence, returned the documents to me. I'm glad that we will finally have a professor specializing in toxicology. And I'm glad you gave me the scholarship, Professor. I smiled thinly. It's also a good opportunity for me to practice a foreign language. That's what our department needed. I formulated a plan to have the students and the resident make their presentation in English in one period. When you come back, you will be the one in charge, all right? I couldn't do much except smile and respond to this order. Of course, Professor. Good. Oh, and I have something for you. Youngyut turned around in his chair. He was now facing the bookshelf behind the desk, taking out a seemingly heavy hardcover book from the shelf. Read a bit of entertainment before you go to New York. They expect you to have basic knowledge before you join them. I looked down at the book of entertainment Youngyut put on his desk. It was a hardcover textbook. The English title was revealed, Toxicology. Its thickness could easily cause intracerebral hemorrhage if you threw it at someone's head. Thank you, sir. I had to carry both my documents and this heavy textbook in my arms out of Professor Youngyut's office. A small sigh escaped my mouth. I felt like I wasn't myself since I got here. I had to be the person who everyone else expected me to be. The students and the residents expected me to be nice and kind. The senior professors expected me to be a role model, an ideal professor. I walked down the hallway next to the department building. I needed to carry this dreadful textbook to my office before my afternoon lecture began. "You need some help with those?" A familiar voice called out to me. I thought that my ears were playing tricks on me until I turned to see the caller standing with a broad smile on his face, not far from me. I stared at that person, stunned. "Sarwit?" I watched the tall boy who was walking towards me. "How did you get here?" The uniform that Sarwit was wearing put an end to my question. He dressed in a college uniform with a necktie in the university colors, showing his status as a first-year student. The boy's face still looked innocent as always. His broad smile was the sincerest form of smile I'd ever seen. He looked good, way better than last time I'd seen him, which might be because of his uniform and his long hair. "I'm in med school." Sarwit reached out to pull the heavy book from my hands. "I failed the quota test, but I passed the COPMEs. I didn't know how to tell you, though, 'cause I took my motorbike and drove to the hospital, but they said you'd quit. I was so sad." "You got into medical school?" I looked up at the boy and felt overwhelmed by joy. A country boy who got into medical school in Bangkok was something worth celebrating. I didn't know Sarwit was very bright in school. "Congratulations. I'm glad to know you're a professor here." Sarwit looked at me with excitement. "I saw you on the faculty's website, so I came to find you here. I didn't expect to really see you. I'm so glad." I furtively smiled at Sarwit, who still spoke in the northern dialect, and it made me feel like I had returned to the place once again. I reached out to pat him on the shoulder. "Hey, you're in Bangkok. Better speak the common tongue. I know what you're saying, but others might not." I know, I'm working on it, really. Only some words slip out and my pals were really confused." Sarwit grinned. "I can't wait to be a fifth-year student. I want to be taught by you, Doctor. Taught by you, Professor Bunnicut. That's in the next 4 years. I'll see you around here. I'm not going anywhere." I led the boy to my office. "How do you like it here? Have you found a girl you like?" I teased casually. Studying during the first year of medical school wasn't that stressful since the university mainly focused on student activities, and it was a prosperous era of love. No, sir." The pink color tainted Sarwit's porcelain cheeks. "Can't get close to any girls. I'm seeing someone." I almost choked. "You're seeing someone?" "We've been dating for a while now. Before I moved to Bangkok, actually. The person I'm seeing just recently graduated and is coming here to find a job." Sarwit covered his face with his palms. Real scary, I tell you. I tried to digest the information from Sarwit. So the boy must have a girlfriend who was older than him. He said this person had just graduated, which probably meant she was 4 or 5 years older than him. Yeah, that didn't sound so bad. If you have a girlfriend, you can no longer flirt with other girls. You better behave then. "I have to, sir, or I'll have a black eye. I don't want a punch or broken bones." There was a look of terror on the boy's countenance. I frowned at this. Is she a boxer or something? Then I remembered that Sarwit used to act like he liked me. A boyfriend, perhaps? I wanted to go into details, but that would seem out of line, evading the boy's personal life like that, so I said nothing more. When we arrived at the office, I ushered Sarwit to my desk, which was sitting by the window. It was an old wooden desk piled with paperwork and unorganized textbooks. If Tan were here to see my workplace, he'd have gouged his eyes out. I tried to push Tan out of my mind. "You can put the books on this desk. Thank you very much for helping me." "Yes, sir." Sarwit lingered there as if he was waiting for my next command. "Go take a lunch break, or you would be late for the afternoon class." I reached out to squeeze his arm. "If you need anything, give me a call. Write down my number." Sarwit frantically pulled out a pen to write my number down on his palm. "Thank you, sir. Well, I'll go eat lunch." "Okay, I'll see you around." I accepted Sarwit's formal farewell in Thai style. before the boy left the room with a bright smile on his face. I was so happy to see him again. I stood there watching him until he disappeared from my view. I pulled out my phone to check the time and saw a reply message from Tan. My mom passed away. This was the first message he sent to me after weeks of silence.